Good morning, Rebels, and welcome back to my life. So today I want to talk about the third Hobbit film, and specifically what didn't need to be there, what either unnecessarily padded the film or outright detracted from it. Obviously, spoiler alert for the movies. The first big, gross, glaring, disgusting, obvious thing, the assistant to the Master, who had way too much screen time and none of it to any real benefit. Now see, in the books, the Master survives the destruction of Lake Town and begins to try to undermine Bard, who begins to come into his own as a leader of men. Though their encounter is brief, it's interesting, because the Master is trying to depose Bard from his new de facto throne. He's an actual threat and an antagonist, and that makes Bard a better character. But in the film, the Master dies trying to escape from Lake Town, and Albert becomes Bard's new lackey, sucking up to him while trying to elevate his own position. Aside from the fact that his villainy is almost cartoonishly overdone, this removes an actual tangible threat to Bard and replaces it with comedic relief, except the comedy isn't really all that funny, it's more eye-rolling. This move surprised me because in the Lord of the Rings films, Peter Jackson went the other direction with his treatment of Faramir. In the books, Faramir provides very little threat whatsoever, but Peter Jackson realized that they couldn't have him in the film if he wasn't going to contribute to the tension and conflict in the story, because what was the point? Whereas here, Peter has taken out a character who did provide tension and replaced him with a character who didn't, and who instead just takes us out of intense emotional scenes. I mean, filling his bra with gold coins? Come on. Aside from Albert, the biggest seemingly anti-canon part of the film is Legolas and Tauriel, who travel to the stronghold of Gundabad, where they discover Bolg raising a second army of goblins. Now clearly this was at least partially done to establish what the Fifth Army was, because in the book the Fifth Army was the wargs, but that was only because they were people who could actually talk. Now I personally would have liked to see that, as well as the talking thrush and the ravens, even though that would have created a slight inconsistency with the Lord of the Rings films where none of these animals can talk. Because the inconsistency is in the books, and plus you've already got talking trolls in The Hobbit where you never had those in Lord of the Rings. But okay, putting that aside, the Tauriel and Legolas journey. The main problem I have with this portion of the film is it seems kind of pointless. I mean, they hear a rumor, go and investigate, discover a new army, and come back and warn the others. This is what motivates Bilbo to go warn Thorin that the goblins are coming, but then that doesn't change anything because Thorin, Fili, and Kili all still die. So why? If we have to have Thor fighting Azog on top of a mountain with only 3 dwarves out of his company of 13 for some reason, and Bilbo has to go warn him about this goblin army, there's any number of ways to do that in the film. And this would have given us the opportunity to have a different Legolas and Tauriel adventure, which would have been not only more epic, but also more personal. Like when they find out Tauriel is banished, Legolas and Tauriel can go confront Thranduil together, giving us some important character interaction between these 3 important elves: the king, the rebel, and the prince caught somewhere in between them. Thranduil could have forced Legolas to choose between his duty and his king and his love for Tauriel, and Legolas, believing himself to be his father's son, would have gone with duty and joined Thranduil in exiling Tauriel. Tauriel, stricken, could have then rejoined Kili, because there's no reason not to now, and fought by his side during the battle, and even seen him die at the hands of Bolg. And then at that point, Legolas, who's been trying to kill Bolg for the last 2 movies, is robbed of his victory when Tauriel just goes Super Saiyan and rips Bolg apart. And in his wonder, Legolas can realize that Tauriel's love is the true source of her strength. So he renounces his father's icy ruthlessness and says that if Thranduil wants to banish Tauriel, he's gonna have to banish Legolas as well, which we already had that in the film, but without all the backstory leading up to it. Thranduil is so moved by this that he pardons Tauriel, gives her the speech that he already gave her in the film, and then gives Legolas the same speech about his mother. Same ending for the characters, but the journey that leads us there makes it that much more awesome. Of course, this is all armchair directing. It's a lot easier to say what you would have done in the same circumstance instead of actually doing it yourself. But yeah, there's one more thing we gotta talk about, which is Thorin's final battle with Azog and his death, but it's gonna have to be in another video. Okay, so clearly I'm just making videos about The Hobbit until I'm done talking about it, so let's all just get used to that, okay? Okay. Thanks for watching, Rebels. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the links to my books in the video description, etc., etc., and I will see you tomorrow. Maybe. Bye!